Claude responded. My daughter-in-law told me she was taking my grandson to spend Thanksgiving with her first husband's family while I was still holding a turkey baster in my own. My daughter-in-law told me she was taking my grandson to spend Thanksgiving with her first husband's family while I was still holding a turkey baster in my own kitchen. Dad. She said she'd called me Dad for 9 years. Tyler needs to know where he comes from. If that's a problem, maybe you and Linda shouldn't come Thursday at all. I set the baster down on the counter. Not hard. I just needed both hands to stop shaking. It was November 19th, a Tuesday, and the kitchen smelled like the onions I'd been chopping for the stuffing. My wife Linda was at the store getting more butter. I'd been looking forward to this dinner for weeks. I'd already bought Tyler a telescope for Christmas, the good kind, because he'd been asking about Saturn's rings since summer. He was 11. I'd been at every one of his birthdays since he was 2. Where's this coming from, Melissa? I asked. She wouldn't look at me directly. Rick reached out. He wants to reconnect with his son. He's been sober 8 months. 8 months, I repeated. Rick's been sober 8 months before. Twice. People change, Frank. Frank. Not Dad. She'd stopped calling me Dad 3 sentences into this conversation, and I don't think she noticed she'd done it. Does Tyler even want to go? I asked. Or is this what you want? Her jaw tightened, the exact way my late son Michael's used to when he was cornered. He's Tyler's biological father. That matters. I know what biological means, Melissa. I buried my son 14 months ago. I know exactly what blood means and what it doesn't. She flinched at that, and for 1 second I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, Rick's family wants to see him too. His grandmother's dying. She wants to meet Tyler before. She's had 11 years to want that. That's not fair. No, I said quietly. It isn't. I want to explain something before I go further, because you need to understand what Melissa was to me. When my son Michael died in that highway accident, Melissa was 6 months, a widow with a 2-year-old, 26 years old, terrified, and completely alone. Rick had left when Tyler was 8 months old, walked out during a bender, and never came back to raise him. Not one diaper, not one fever, not one Christmas morning until now. Apparently, when his mother was dying, and he needed something to show up for, Linda and I didn't hesitate. We moved 20 minutes closer to Melissa's apartment. I taught Tyler to ride a bike in the church parking lot the same way I'd taught Michael 30 years earlier. I sat in the waiting room during Tyler's tonsil surgery while Melissa cried in the hallway because somebody had to be calm. I coached his Little League team for 4 seasons. I was there for the first day of kindergarten, the day he lost his first tooth, the science fair volcano that overflowed onto the kitchen floor. Rick sent a birthday card once, from what I understood, with $10 in it 4 years ago. None of that apparently qualified as real. Did Tyler ask for this? I said. Or did you decide it for him? He's 11, Frank. I make decisions for him. That's not what I asked. She looked away toward the living room where Tyler's backpack sat by the door, exactly where he always left it. He deserves to have both parents in his life. Is that so wrong? It's not wrong to want your son to know his father. It's wrong to erase the man who actually raised him to make room for one who didn't. Nobody's erasing you. You just called me Frank 3 times in one conversation. She didn't have an answer for that. I want to tell you what happened next, because it matters. I asked her plainly, are you telling me Linda and I aren't welcome Thursday? Or are you asking us to share the day with a man who abandoned his own son? I'm telling you things are complicated. That's not an answer either. She rubbed her temples, the exhausted gesture of someone who'd rehearsed this conversation and hadn't expected pushback. Maybe it's easier if you two do your own thing this year, just until things settle. I felt something go still and quiet inside my chest, the same feeling I remember from the night the state trooper called about Michael. Not rage, something colder than rage. Resignation, maybe, mixed with the particular exhaustion of a man who has spent his whole life being the reliable one and has just been told, gently, that reliability doesn't buy loyalty. All right, I said, we'll figure something out. She looked relieved, like the hard part was over. It wasn't. It hadn't even started. I drove home that night past the assisted living facility where I'd been putting off a decision for almost a year. My company, Halbrook Industrial, had offered me a consulting contract in Perth, Australia, 18 months earlier, overseeing a mining equipment retrofit for 2 years, 6 figures, housing included. I'd turned it down flat. Linda and I had built our whole retirement plan around staying close to Tyler. I was 63 years old. Moving to the other side of the world at my age had felt reckless, almost embarrassing. That night, sitting in my truck in our driveway, I pulled up the old email. The offer had a note at the bottom. Still interested if circumstances change. Let us know by December 1st. Linda found me in there an hour later, the truck light still on. She didn't ask why I was crying. She'd been in the kitchen. She'd heard enough of it through the window. You should call them, she said. I don't want to run away. You're not running away, Frank. You're finally putting yourself somewhere in the equation. She took my hand. For 38 years, you've been the man everybody calls when something breaks. Michael's gone. Tyler has a mother making her own choices. Let somebody else be the reliable one for a while. I didn't sleep that night. At 7 a.m., I called my younger brother, Walt, who'd been a family law paralegal for 20 years before retiring. I told him everything: Melissa, Thanksgiving, Rick, the job offer. You haven't done anything wrong here, Frank, Walt said. But if you're thinking about pulling back financially, you need to be smart about it, not emotional. I'm not trying to punish her. I know. But you've been covering things quietly for years, haven't you? Tyler's school fees. That car you helped her lease. I had. Nobody had ever asked me to keep receipts. Document what's yours, Walt said. Redirect what needs redirecting. Don't touch anything that would hurt Tyler directly. His college fund, his health insurance, none of that changes. But you don't owe anyone a blank check just because you love a child who isn't legally yours. That week, I quietly restructured what I could. The car lease stayed in my name, but I contacted the dealership about the transfer options coming due in the spring. I kept the small college fund exactly as it was, untouched, because that money was Tyler's regardless of what happened between the adults. I called Halbrook Industrial on November 24th and accepted the Perth contract. 2 years, starting January 6th. I told Melissa on Thanksgiving morning, standing in her doorway instead of coming inside, because I hadn't been invited past the porch since our last conversation. Rick's Buick was already in the driveway. You're not staying? She asked. And for a second, she looked like the frightened 26-year-old widow I'd first met, not the woman who told me to figure something else out for the holiday. Linda and I are having dinner with the Petersons, I said. That part was true. I also wanted you to know I've accepted a job in Australia. I leave in January. Her face changed. Australia. Perth. 2 years. What about Tyler? What about him, Melissa? You told me a week ago that Linda and I weren't welcome at your table. I'm trying to understand what role you think I still have. She didn't answer that. Rick appeared behind her in the hallway, heavier than I remembered, wearing a shirt that still had the fold creases from the package. He raised a hand in an awkward wave I did not return. I'll call you when I land, I told her, and left before either of us could say something we couldn't take back. Christmas that year was quiet. Linda and I hosted her sister's family instead, and I kept my phone face down through most of dinner because I knew if Tyler texted asking where I was, I wouldn't be able to explain it without crying at the table. He did text, actually, on Christmas Eve. Where are you guys? Mom said you were busy. I didn't answer until I'd composed myself. I told him I loved him and that I'd call him soon. I didn't mention Australia yet. That felt like a conversation that deserved his full attention, not a text between wrapping paper and pie. Linda flew out with me on January 6th. My flight connected through Los Angeles, then 18 hours to Perth with a stop in Auckland, and I landed feeling like my bones had been rearranged in transit. Our temporary apartment overlooked a marina I couldn't afford to enjoy properly, not with the weight sitting on my chest. The plant itself was a mess. Halbrook's Australian operation had failed 2 safety audits in a row, and the local engineers didn't trust the American retrofit specs, and the American Home Office didn't trust the local reports. Everyone assumed the other side was cutting corners. My first week, a site supervisor named Grace Okafor, sharp, no patience for excuses, told me flatly that corporate had sent 3 consultants in 2 years, and none of them had lasted 6 months. Why do you think that is? I asked her. Because they came here to fix numbers. Nobody came here to fix people. I thought about that sentence more than she probably intended. 3 weeks in, Walt called with news. He'd been quietly checking on Rick, the way a good brother does when he suspects something's off. Rick had started a consulting business, advising small trucking companies on fleet financing, except he had no financial background, no license, and 2 dissolved LLCs from the past decade. One had ended in a lawsuit over unpaid contractor fees. He's not dangerous, Walt said. He's just a man who needs somebody to believe in him more than he's ever believed in himself. That describes half the men I went to high school with. Sure, but here's the part you need to hear. He's been talking to Melissa about Tyler's trust fund, the one your parents set up before they passed. I sat very still. That trust was modest $30,000, meant for Tyler's education, untouchable until he turned 18, unless a guardian petitioned the court for early release with a documented reason. Has he asked her to petition it? Not yet, as far as I can tell. But he's mentioned business opportunities to her twice that a mutual friend overheard. I think he's laying groundwork. I called Melissa that night. She didn't pick up. I called Tyler instead, and he answered on the second ring, his voice already brighter just from the sound of my name on the screen. Grandpa, Mom said you moved to Australia for work. I did, buddy. How's school? Fine. Mr. Delgado's making us do a whole unit on the solar system. I told him you got me that telescope thing, but I haven't opened it yet because you said Christmas. My chest ached. You'll get it, Tyler, I promise. There was a pause, the kind kids do when they're working up courage. Are you and Grandma coming back? I don't know yet, buddy. But I'm never far, even from here. You understand? I guess. Another pause. Rick's around a lot now. How do you feel about that? Weird. He tries really hard. Like, too hard. He bought me a bike, but it's the wrong size, and he got mad when I said that. You don't have to pretend to like something you don't, Tyler. Not even to make an adult feel better. That's what Grandma Linda always says, too. I smiled despite everything. She's usually right. After we hung up, I sat with my laptop and read through 18 months of quiet financial history I hadn't paid attention to closely enough payments I'd made without asking questions. A car lease I'd co-signed without thinking twice. Small conveniences I'd extended because that's what you do for family. I realized, sitting there in that unfamiliar apartment 11 time zones from home, that I had spent years being generous without ever once asking whether the generosity was respected or simply expected. 6 weeks later, Melissa called. Her voice had none of its earlier confidence. Rick's gone, she said. He left again. 2 weeks ago. Took the truck I helped him lease. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to. The silence did that work for me. Frank, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. All right. Did you know he asked me about Tyler's trust fund? I suspected. I said no. I want you to know that. Whatever else I did wrong, I said no. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. She was quiet for a long moment. I told you Tyler needed his real father. I think what I actually wanted was my old life back, the one before Michael died, when things felt simple. I used Tyler's name to ask for something that was really about me. I let that sit between us before I spoke. I'm not going to pretend that didn't hurt, Melissa, but I appreciate you saying it. Can we talk? Really talk, not like Thanksgiving. I'd like that. We talked most weeks after that, carefully, the way you rebuild something without pretending it was never broken. She apologized to Linda directly, in a handwritten letter that arrived 8 weeks later, admitting she'd let grief and loneliness convince her that erasing me made room for Tyler's real father, when in fact, she'd just been trying to erase her own grief by rewriting who counted as family. The Perth contract extended past its original 2 years, mostly because Grace and I actually turned the plant around not through discipline memos, but by making both engineering teams sit in the same room until they stopped assuming the worst of each other. The client renewed. Corporate noticed. I was offered a permanent regional director position, and for the first time in a long while, I said yes to something purely because I wanted it, not because someone needed me to. Tyler visited that second summer. Watching him come through arrivals, taller, quieter in that particular way 12-year-olds get before they trust you with what they're actually feeling, I felt something in my chest loosen that had been tight since that Thanksgiving doorway conversation. He hugged me hard enough that Linda laughed and told him to leave some ribs unbroken. That evening, walking along the marina, he asked, out of nowhere, "Are you still mad at Mom?" "No," I said, and realized as I said it that it was true. I was hurt. That's different from angry, and it's mostly gone now, too. She cries sometimes. About Thanksgiving. She doesn't know I hear her. Grief makes people say things they don't mean, buddy. Your mom lost your dad, my son, and I think some part of her went looking for something to fill that hole, even if it was the wrong thing. Rick wasn't it. No, I agreed. He wasn't. Tyler was quiet a moment, watching the boats. You're still my grandpa, right? Even from all the way out here? Tyler, distance doesn't change what somebody is to you. Only how somebody treats you does that. I put my arm around his shoulders. I've been your grandfather since the day you were born, and nothing that happened at that Thanksgiving table changes that. He leaned into me the way he used to when he was small enough to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides. I opened the telescope, he said. Christmas Eve, actually. Mom let me. We looked at Saturn from the balcony. Could you see the rings? Barely. But I could see them. That Christmas, our second in Perth, Melissa called on the actual day. No requests, no old resentments, just a simple message. Merry Christmas. Thank you for everything you've done for Tyler, then and now. I hope you and Linda are happy out there. I wrote back that I hoped she was finding peace too, and I meant every word of it. People sometimes ask me whether moving to Australia was about punishing Melissa or proving a point. It wasn't. It was about understanding, at 63 years old, that love and duty aren't supposed to mean disappearing quietly whenever somebody decides you're inconvenient. Walking away from that Thanksgiving table didn't erase the years I'd spent showing up for that boy. It simply made room for me to keep being his grandfather on my own terms, instead of on borrowed ones. If you've ever been told you weren't real family after spending years being exactly that, I hope you know the love was never the problem. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do is stop accepting less than you deserve, even from the people you love the most. Thank you for listening to my story. Claude responded, being family was never about the blood you share. It's about the seasons you show up for. Being family was never about the blood you share. It's about the seasons you show up for. Frank didn't lose Tyler by flying to the other side of the world. He kept him by finally refusing to be treated as optional. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is stop shrinking yourself to keep the peace and trust that real love finds its way back across any distance. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI for entertainment purposes, though we hope its heartfelt lesson still finds a place in your life.